a harrowing tale of secrets and sacrifice. In a quiet, isolated city, there was a young doctor named Elias. He was sent there because a terrible plague was making many people sick. Elias was kind and wanted to help everyone, but he had a secret that no one knew. He was obsessed with finding a way to control life and death. This obsession started because he lost someone close to him, and he couldn't let it go. The quiet, isolated city was once a bustling metropolis, now a ghost town echoing with the mournful tolls of a distant church bell. Its buildings, once symbols of human progress, were now crumbling monuments to despair. The air hung heavy with an eerie stillness, broken only by the occasional, wraith-like figure stumbling through the deserted streets. Elias, a young man with haunted eyes and a desperate determination, arrived in this desolate place with a heavy heart. His reputation preceded him as a brilliant, compassionate doctor, but beneath that facade lurked a darkness. The loss of his beloved had ignited a consuming fire within him, a relentless pursuit of knowledge that blurred the lines between life and death. He carried with him a worn leather-bound journal filled with intricate diagrams, cryptic notes, and disturbing sketches. It was a testament to his obsession, a chronicle of failed experiments and forbidden desires. As he delved into the heart of the plague, his research took a sinister turn. The city, with its dying population, became his grotesque laboratory. The people of the city, weakened by the plague, were mere subjects in his twisted experiment. Their fear and desperation made them easy prey for his manipulation. With a cold, calculated detachment, he began to test his theories, blurring the lines between healer and destroyer. Elias worked day and night, treating the sick and trying to find a cure. He wore a mask and a long coat to protect himself from the disease, just like the old plague doctors did. People in the city trusted him because he was smart and always tried his best. But deep inside, Elias was curious about the plague. He wondered if he could learn something new, something powerful from this terrible disease. As he treated patients, he took notes and experimented in secret. He thought that maybe, if he understood the plague better, he could find a way to stop death altogether. But he knew this was dangerous, and he couldn't let anyone find out. So he kept his secret hidden, pretending to be just a regular doctor. But little did he know, someone was starting to notice strange things happening in the city. And soon, Elias would find himself in more trouble than he ever imagined. The quarantined city was a ghost town, a skeletal husk of its former vibrant self. Fear, like a palpable fog, hung heavy in the air. Everyone was a prisoner, trapped within their homes, their minds consumed by the ever-present threat of the plague. Yet, amidst the collective terror, a flicker of suspicion ignited in the mind of one man. Mr. Gray was no ordinary citizen. A government investigator, he had been dispatched to the heart of the contagion, his mission shrouded in secrecy. While others trembled at the mere mention of the disease, a cold, methodical determination burned within him. The plague was a crisis, yes, but it was also an opportunity, a chance for unscrupulous individuals to exploit the chaos. His arrival was discreet, his movements shadowed. Beneath the city's eerie calm, he sensed a sinister undercurrent, a discordant rhythm that clashed with the mournful dirges of the infected. As he delved deeper into the quarantine labyrinth, he began to uncover disturbing patterns, inexplicable occurrences that defied the logic of a simple epidemic. Was it merely paranoia, or was something truly sinister lurking in the shadows of the quarantined city? Mr. Gray started to notice something odd. Some of the patients had unusual symptoms, different from the usual plague signs. They got better or worse in strange ways. He began to think that maybe someone was experimenting with them. He didn't know who, but he had a feeling that the young doctor, Elias, might know something. Mr. Gray watched Elias closely. He saw the doctor going to different places at strange times. He noticed how Elias sometimes stayed longer with certain patients, taking more notes than usual. Mr. Gray grew more suspicious. He thought Elias might be hiding something, maybe even a secret cure or something dangerous. As Mr. Gray's relentless pursuit of the truth drew closer, Elias found himself ensnared in a growing web of unease. He couldn't pinpoint the source of his anxiety, but it was a constant, gnawing presence. It was as if the city itself was holding its breath, an eerie stillness broken only by the distant echo of its own heartbeat. The once familiar streets had transformed into shadows, and every creaking floorboard and rustling leaf sounded like a sinister whisper. Elias felt like a deer caught in headlights, paralyzed by the impending confrontation with Mr. Gray. His mind raced, conjuring worst-case scenarios. What if Mr. Gray already knew the truth? What if he was playing a dangerous game? And the stakes were far higher than Elias had ever imagined. With each passing moment, the storm clouds gathered, and Elias knew that soon he would be standing in the eye of the tempest. Elias, the young doctor, started to feel uneasy. He noticed that Mr. Gray, the investigator, was always around, watching him. Elias felt like he was being followed, even when he was just walking to see a patient. He knew he had to be careful because he didn't want anyone to find out his secret experiments. To keep his secret safe, Elias began to change his routine. He visited patients at different times and stopped taking as many notes. He even hid his special journal in a secret place, away from his clinic. Elias acted like everything was normal, smiling and talking to people like usual. But inside, he was worried. One night, Elias went to check on a patient who had strange symptoms. He made sure no one was watching and quickly did his tests. But as he left, he saw Mr. Gray standing at the end of the street, staring at him. Elias pretended not to notice and walked away calmly, but his heart was racing. Elias knew he had to be more careful. He started destroying some of his notes and made sure to only experiment when no one was around. He even avoided talking to other doctors, afraid they might suspect something. But no matter how careful he was, Mr. Gray seemed to be getting closer to discovering the truth. Elias felt trapped, like a cornered animal, and he didn't know how long he could keep hiding his secret. Mr. Gray was sure something strange was going on with Elias. He decided to set a trap to catch the young doctor. He started spreading rumors that a special medicine had been found and that it could cure the plague. Mr. Gray hoped this would make Elias do something suspicious. He also arranged for a few fake patients to come into the clinic. These patients pretended to be very sick, with symptoms that weren't real. Mr. Gray wanted to see how Elias would react. He thought that if Elias did something unusual, it would prove he was hiding something. Elias heard about the rumors and felt worried. He knew he had to be careful, but he was curious about the new patients. He went to check on them, trying to act normal, but Mr. Gray was watching closely. He noticed that Elias seemed more interested in these patients than usual. Elias asked them many questions and took a lot of notes. Later, Mr. Gray secretly checked the notes Elias had taken. He found that Elias was writing about things that didn't seem like normal medical notes. Mr. Gray felt he was getting closer to the truth. He thought Elias might be using the plague to do secret experiments. Elias didn't know Mr. Gray was checking his notes. He continued his work, trying to figure out the mystery of the plague. But Mr. Gray's trap was starting to work. Elias was being pushed into a corner, and soon he might make a mistake that would reveal his secret. Elias felt more and more pressure. He knew someone was trying to catch him doing something wrong. He had to protect his secret experiments, so he decided to fight back. He tried to think of ways to outsmart Mr. Gray. Elias started to act differently. He began spreading his own rumors, saying that some patients were getting better with simple treatments. He hoped this would confuse Mr. Gray and make him think there was nothing unusual happening. Elias also made some fake notes, writing about normal treatments instead of his real experiments. To keep Mr. Gray busy, Elias sent him on wild goose chases. He told other doctors about strange symptoms in patients far away from his clinic. Mr. Gray followed these leads, but they were just distractions. Elias thought this would give him more time to work without being watched. But even with these tricks, Elias felt trapped. He couldn't experiment as much as he wanted to, and he was always looking over his shoulder. He knew Mr. Gray was still suspicious, and it was getting harder to hide. Elias's mind was full of worry, and he made mistakes. He mixed up his fake notes with his real ones, almost getting caught. Elias tried to stay calm, but the tension was too much. He felt like a puppet, with Mr. Gray pulling the strings. Elias was running out of ideas, and the walls were closing in. He needed a new plan, but time was running out. Just when the city's despair was reaching its zenith, a glimmer of hope arrived in the form of Dr. Maria. A renowned physician from a distant land, she stepped into the chaos with an aura of calm determination. Her arrival was met with a surge of optimism, a desperate clutch at the lifeline she seemed to offer. With her came a fresh perspective, a battery of unconventional treatments, and a relentless drive to conquer the plague. The city, starved for hope, embraced her with open arms. Her every word was dissected, her actions scrutinized. She was more than a doctor. She was a symbol of resilience, a beacon in the encroaching darkness. Dr. Maria started working with the other doctors, including Elias. She noticed right away that something was strange about the plague. She asked a lot of questions and studied the patients carefully. Dr. Maria was smart and curious, and she didn't believe in simple answers. Elias felt nervous around Dr. Maria. He was afraid she might discover his secret, but something surprising happened. Dr. Maria found some of Elias's hidden notes and experiments. Instead of getting him in trouble, she was interested. She thought Elias was onto something important and wanted to help. Elias was shocked. He never expected someone like Dr. Maria to support his work. She offered to work with him in secret, combining their knowledge to understand the plague better. Dr. Maria had her own theories and believed they could find a cure together. Mr. Gray, however, was still watching. His cold, calculating eyes never left the room, their icy gaze fixated on the unfolding scene. He noticed Dr. Maria's unusual interest in Elias, her eyes lingering on the boy with a peculiar intensity. A flicker of suspicion ignited within him, a spark in the dead embers of his curiosity. Was there something more to this woman than met the eye? Was she, like the others, merely a pawn in a sinister game? The thought sent a shiver down his spine, a chilling realization that perhaps the plague was not the end, but merely a precursor to something far more terrifying. A darkness was lurking beneath the surface, a malevolent force that was beginning to reveal its monstrous form. The game had changed. With Dr. Maria's unexpected arrival, the rules were different. Elias felt a mix of hope and fear. He had an ally now, but also a new risk. They both knew they had to be careful, or everything could fall apart. As days passed, the tension in the city grew. People were still getting sick, and there was no cure in sight. Mr. Gray decided it was time to confront Elias and Dr. Maria. He gathered some guards and went to the clinic where they were working. Elias and Dr. Maria were in the middle of a secret experiment when Mr. Gray and the guards burst in. Mr. Gray had found enough clues to accuse them of doing something wrong. He demanded to see all their notes and experiments, suspecting they were hiding a cure or doing something dangerous. Elias felt a chill of fear. He knew they were caught. Dr. Maria tried to stay calm, but even she looked worried. They both knew this was the moment of truth. They had to explain their actions or face serious consequences. Mr. Gray started questioning them, asking why they had been experimenting in secret. Elias tried to explain that they were only trying to help, but Mr. Gray didn't believe him. He thought they were hiding something harmful or using the plague for their own gain. Dr. Maria stepped forward and showed Mr. Gray some of the experiments. She explained that they were trying to understand the disease better and find a real cure. She said they kept it secret because they didn't want to cause panic or give false hope. The room was silent as everyone waited for Mr. Gray's response. He looked at the notes and then at Elias and Dr. Maria. It was a tense moment, with everyone on edge. The truth was out, but it was unclear if it would save them or doom them. After Elias took the experimental cure, everyone waited anxiously. The minutes felt like hours. Elias sat down, breathing heavily. Dr. Maria checked his pulse and looked worried. They didn't know what to expect. At first, nothing happened. Then, Elias started to feel strange. He felt a mix of hot and cold, and his head hurt. Everyone watched closely, unsure if the cure was working or if it was harming him. Mr. Gray stood by, ready to call for help if needed. Slowly, the symptoms seemed to get better. Elias's fever went down, and he started to look more like himself. Dr. Maria checked him again and saw signs that the cure might be working. There was a glimmer of hope in the room. But then, something unexpected happened. Elias suddenly looked very tired and weak. He tried to speak but couldn't find the words. Dr. Maria and Mr. Gray exchanged worried glances. They didn't know if the cure was working or if it was hurting him. In the end, Elias closed his eyes and fell asleep, exhausted. They didn't know if he would wake up feeling better or worse. Mr. Gray decided to wait and see what happened next. He ordered the guards to stay outside the clinic, just in case. As the night went on, the city remained quiet. People still feared the plague, and they didn't know about the brave doctor who had tried to find a cure. The outcome was uncertain. Would Elias recover and prove that the cure worked, or would he suffer from its unknown side effects? The story ends with Elias asleep, his fate unknown. Dr. Maria stayed by his side, watching over him. Mr. Gray, still suspicious, waited for answers. The open ending leaves everyone wondering, was the cure real? Would the plague finally end? And what would become of Elias and the people in the city? The future was uncertain, and only time would tell what would happen next.